Hello, good morning, and welcome to a wonderful, glorious day of life over here, folks. Yes, I am enthusiastic. I know, extra enthusiastic, because Lori just reminded me that this is going to be our third, right? Our third show of 2024 before it ends. We got two more, but I got a little warm fuzzy. And who is saying all this to you if this is your first time here? My name is Sadie Uribe, and I'm the media producer for Los Angeles Regional SBDC Network. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. We offer no-cost services to the local businesses through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration and from the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. Go Biz. I think I'm a little too excited, Lori, because I'm just like doing mumblecore on these words of who we are. Well, the Los Angeles Regional Small Business Development Center Network serves small businesses throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And we offer no-cost business advising, meaning that you can meet one-on-one via phone or Zoom to address your specific needs and challenges. And we also offer virtual training and wonderful programming as this show to help you adapt and grow your business. Oh my God, Lori, I can't believe it. No, can we have secret webinars? Can we have secret presentations?
I know I can't believe it. And like I was telling you, everybody, I'm going to do it in the notes, is that we have a 2-week hiatus because of the fact that it just falls that I think it's like Christmas Eve or Christmas Days on a Wednesday and then New Year's Days on a Wednesday. So this is the first time in years, Guy, 2 full weeks. In fact, I decided, and I got to not forget, I was planning on going through some of the old episodes, pick up some of the wonderful episodes. And next week, which is our last week before the break, Sadie's going to put those specific ones into the chat. So I say, hey guys, while we're gone, take a look at these, take a look at these. But yeah, the holidays are around the corner. But I don't know if anybody else, you can give me a comment in the chat. Is anybody else ready for a break? I am so ready. I don't know what it is about this year, but I just want to go in a little turtle shell and not be in the public for a while and just kind of refresh. So I don't know if anybody else is on that same thought process, but that is where I am. So although I'll miss doing the show, I am going to come back refreshed because I need a little break today. Okay, guys, let's get started today. We got a really exciting show coming up. I have already scheduled all of my webinars for January. I think actually Sadie has the link and maybe putting it in the chat. But this is what we have coming up. I actually just gave the financial literacy session 2. Session 3 is a hard one to jump in if you hadn't been through 1 and 2. So Sadie, I think, has the link for January in case you want to get a good start. Guys, you know how I feel. It is always a good time to know your numbers. Always a good time. So maybe I can give everybody a little New Year's goal. Okay, let's start with the New Year's goal. In the New Year's, I am going to really understand my company's numbers, my profitability, so I can use those numbers to make better decisions within my company. How about that, guys? You like the New Year's goal? You can have all your other ones, but just tack a little Lori one on there for you. It'll bring you happiness, I guarantee, because knowledge is power and you make better decisions accordingly. Okay, the last show of the year, I've asked Emma Green to come back on. Emma Green's one of our frequent flyers, probably in the chat right now. Shout out to Emma. Emma's inspirational. She's educational. She has done fantastic things with her company, all basically because she had to. COVID, all these things came upon her, and she took each one of them and made them into opportunities beyond even her comprehension. I love her story. The guests love her story. I love her energy. So I reached out to Emma and said, Emma, we're coming on the last show for the year. I want it to be a fun, inspirational one. Can you come on the show again? And she agreed. And so next week, we're going to have a lot of fun. There's Emma. I see her there. And also, I want to do a shout out to you guys. Next week, let's communicate a bit. Tell me what you're doing for the holidays, what your big excitement is. Let's have a lot of fun next week and let's make it just kind of special, not rehearsed. Let's see where we go with it show. Okay, I have a quick announcement that I want to make, an important announcement. I have been talking to you guys about the BOI forever. That's the Beneficial Ownership Information Document. I've been stressing the importance of the deadline coming up for those of you who were incorporated prior to this year. Okay, hold your horses here. Stop, stop, stop the shop, as they say. I have to make an announcement of what's going on. Please listen to everything I'm saying because some people are saying it partially, and I want you to know the full information. What you are looking at on my screen is straight off of their website, okay? It is straight off their website. Let me give you some background information on what's going on. There was a court case going through the court that reached the federal courts in eastern Texas. It's the Texas Top Cop Shop. Say that fast 10 times. And it went and what basically, I'm going to speak just in plain English rather than I keep starting. I don't want to give you the legal words. I want to speak plain English. So what it had to do with is they were saying the Corporate Transparency Act, which is CTA, and that enjoins the regulations for completing this beneficial ownership information document, the BOI, right? So that act that says that the U.S. Department of Treasury, FinCEN, can require individuals to fill out this form is being questioned as to whether it's constitutional or not. That's a really good way of saying it in plain English. So in that, with this litigation and the Texas Top Cop Shop, the Eastern federal judge put a stay, meaning you do not have to fill out this document till further litigation and processes are completed. Okay. So at this point in time, if you are choosing to do it, it's voluntary. You do not have to. But I said at this point in time, guys, because some people are saying the BOI is dead. You don't have to fill it out. Don't worry about it. That's not the truth. It has a temporary stay. Now, it's true that temporary stay can become permanent and you will never have to fill it out. If you want to, you can fill it out, but at this point, it's not required. Therefore, there will be no penalties if it's not filed by the deadline. Now, several cases are going through the courts. This is not the only one. In some of the previous cases, the judges voted for the CTA. Yes, you can enforce it. Some of them they're saying, no, you can't enforce it. So it is being worked out in the courts. That's the best way to say it. Now, the CTA, the FinCEN, U.S. Treasury has already filed an appeal. So when this appeal goes through, when it's in the courts and it's decided again, it could come back and say, hey, you now have to fill it out. Or it come back and say, no, you don't. So the thing I'm trying to say to everybody is don't just like put it in your head, it's gone forever and think you never have to be concerned about it. Because if you don't stay on top of it and you don't check the website, which I put the website link in there, Sadie's putting it in the chat, it could have reversed and now you do have to do it and the deadline is in existence again. And of course, I will be here to keep you up to date on it, on whatever changes happen. But mostly, I just want you guys to know you do not have to. As of this point in time, it is voluntary. I will let you know when, if that changes. Any questions, any confusion on that? Believe me, it is confusion. You just reach out to me and let me know. Okay, let's get into today's show. It's very exciting, and I see Dahlia's in the audience. Yes, this special guest is, thank you to Dahlia for introducing me to Marjorie McPike. Marjorie is a certified public accountant focusing on tax and small business accounting, and she's located in Riverside County in California. Marjorie attended San Diego University, where she received her Bachelors of Science in Business Administration with a concentration in accounting. She also holds a Master of Science in Taxation from Golden Gate University. Marjorie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lori. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
You know what? I always like to start out, especially by people who are numbers people, because our audience is always like, I hate numbers. I'm scared of numbers. I'm scared of numbers, right? And the answer is always all over the place when I talk to a numbers person. Did you get born and say, I want to be in numbers, and that's what you wanted to be, or did you come upon it? How did you get on the career trajectory that you are on now?
That is a good question. So I have always been into numbers and playing office and balancing things. One of the things that I liked to do when I was growing up was like find adding machines. So my mom would take me like to the thrift stores and we buy adding machines, and we go to the grocery store, buy the groceries, and I bring them back before we can put them away. I have to put them all on the counter, and then I have to add it up to see if it total. So
Oh, that's hilarious.
I've always been into numbers. I would play office with my sister and a friend when I was growing up. And so when I was in high school, I thought that I was going to be a math teacher. That's kind of the direction I was going. And then someone mentioned to me about being an accountant. And so I took an accounting class or a bookkeeping class at that time. And that's just where it's always been. I've always been into numbers and math and just the whole part of it. Yeah, always been doing it.
Well, that's funny because, I started out as the warm, fuzzy marketing salesperson. I hated
Hmm.
math. I hated numbers, right? And I
Hmm.
never expected to be on the trajectory. They call me the guru of all numbers, which is hilarious. My desire to get into it was really a desperation. I started my first company at 25 marketing, right? And I
Hmm.
couldn't answer, Marjorie, I didn't know enough to say, is my company profitable? I was like, can I pay the rent? It's not looking like I can, and I'm working, so why can't I pay the rent, right? And I
Right.
remember at the time trying to find out, going to my, accountant, trying to get the answer from my accountant, and my not being able to answer that question is what led me down my path of
Mm.
trying to find it and then falling into the love of numbers, because what I now say, and you saw me before when I was talking about, goals, numbers is power. Numbers is
Yes.
the way that we can have control over our companies. So before we get into that, tell us about your practice. What type of companies do you work with? What do you do? Give us your complete rundown on your company and how long you've been doing your company, etc. We want some background information.
So I have been just in public accounting for many years. And then during the pandemic time when we were all sitting at home, working from home, working remotely, and, you can't go anywhere, get on Instagram, you hear people talking about what's going on Instagram and social media. And so, of course, I was drawn to that as well. And I started seeing a lot of individuals that were making a lot of money. And so you see the individuals that are making the money, but then you also see the advice that these individuals are getting because people just started posting things on Facebook or on Instagram. And so I'm like, no, that's not correct. So I just kind of started jumping in and then started kind of advising some people. And then I started doing some consulting. And that's kind of how my business came about. I created a couple courses about, understanding your taxes. I started a podcast back then, um, just kind of educating people on how to run their business, how to, things to look for, the entity types, just that type of information. And so now my business, it focuses on small businesses. That's what I do. I'm primarily income tax preparation. I do advising and tax strategies. I do some accounting and bookkeeping. It's not my main focus, but I do it because you want to have the information, right? The good information in order to prepare the tax return. So I do some of that as well. But a lot of it is education. And I tell people it's really interesting because when you're at a larger firm, you're not doing that. It's like, I went from doing 754 elections with, 30, 40 partners on partnership returns and large investments to just explaining to someone what an LLC is, and a single member LLC. So
Yep.
it's just a lot of education. And I enjoy that because, like you said, numbers is power. And I respect you for knowing that there was something that you needed to know about your business. And so you went out to find that information. And that's what it's all about, just kind of helping people because there are so many people that they have wonderful ideas. And that's another thing that I saw. It's like people had wonderful ideas. They had the work ethic to go out there and start the business and generate the revenue, but they just didn't know how to build that strong foundation.
Oh my God. You know what? I already know why Delia said I had to have you on the show. So I've got goosebumps already. I can already see this has got to be several shows. So this is where I would, you said so much I want to unpack. So, Marjorie, and I'm going to start with the little pieces and build up on this. I want to go back to the first thing you said, where you were noting that on social media, there were people that were speaking. It wasn't factual what they were saying. They were making a lot of money. They were drawing a lot of eyeballs to it, but it wasn't correct. I want to talk about this for our audience to have an understanding. Now, neither you or I maybe know why exactly all this is happening, but where I'm going with this is when I talk with the, individual clients on a daily basis, I'm having to almost buck the system of what they already heard. They'll say,
Mhm.
well, I'm going to start an LLC so I can have tax advantages. No, it's the same as a sole prop. But no, 10 people told me this. Well, no, the 10 people are wrong. Well, why would 10 people be wrong? I don't know. I think it's because a lot of the people that are speaking don't have the background, but they're getting eyeball. I'm trying to, I'm
Mhm.
trying to explain to them because, of course, they're confused. They're like, but I'm hearing it everywhere. How can you be telling me that's not true? So let's just, I know neither one of us is going to
Mhm.
solve or analyze this, but let's just talk about its existence so our audience can have a word that I have really been engaging a lot with, and that is discernment.
That's a
So,
good word. That's a
isn't
good
it a
word.
good word? So, what can we tell our audience about when they are watching many of these individuals? My words are, I'll tell you what I say, and then you can tell me what your thoughts are.
Mhm.
Don't get your tax finance or information from YouTube. Learn how to make a basket, or like I just learned how to use a table saw on a
Mhm.
DIY table saw on YouTube, which is crazy as it is, but don't learn your legal tax finance from a YouTube channel. You can't make sure it's accurate. Okay, that's my short answer. You may have a little bit more delicate and proper answer, but let's just talk to this need for them to have discernment and the fact that a lot of stuff being said out there is not correct.
I think it's okay to go to YouTube or to go to the internet if you have a general question, but you have to realize that taxes are unique, right? So everybody's tax situation is not the same. So just because this person goes out and they make an LLC and they're able to do X, Y, and Z, that doesn't mean that it's going to apply to you. That's the same thing like when an individual come to you and they say, "Oh, well, that my friend got $7,000 back as a refund on their tax return. Why didn't I get a refund?" It's like your tax situations are unique. So you have to go and you have to seek out a professional in order to discuss your situation and get the right information. Another thing with the internet was that, people saw it as a moneymaker. You see people on the internet making money and they're just saying things. And so people start selling information. They sell infographics, about having an LLC. They'll say infographics about, anything about a bookkeeping business. You can go out and you can buy that, but you still have to know that the information is correct. But everybody's not doing that. They're just putting it out there because it's a way for them to draw people in and make the money. So you
Yeah.
have to be, like you said, you have to have discernment. You have to know, okay, this sounds like it could be okay. And it's okay to have a little bit of information. You should know, have some background so that you can go and you can discuss it intelligently with your accountant or your attorney. But you shouldn't just depend on what it is that's said. There are so many people that started LLCs and they didn't even realize that in California, you have to file a return, a 568
I
for
know.
your LLC if you're a single member LLC. And people weren't filing them. It's
Yeah.
like you go back years. I was doing something for someone, it's years, 5 6 years that they've never filed their 568. So you have to know the information, get the information, and then fact check it. I'll say that, fact check the
Yeah,
information.
I love that, absolutely, and I knew you would give a longer one if I gave you the direction to go to, and I agree, like, I think a lot of times being able to go on the internet, you start to learn the verbiage, the terminology, it
Hmm.
tells you
Hmm.
what to go after next, and you know what struck me as you were saying that, Marjorie, too, and you're right, a lot of people were making these webinars that might be, or these videos that might be, you should be an S corp because it'll save you. You should be an LLC, could it do it? And I think what it does is it feeds into our point that there are a lot of small businesses out there that are confused and seeking the information. That's why they're presenting it, even though it's incorrect, because it does draw eyeballs. So I think it really shows to the demand of small companies needing clarity and correct information. And that struck
Yes.
me as you were speaking of that. So let's
Hmm.
talk about, I want to talk about needing to have, and I'm just going to say a tax preparer. So this is another thing that I talk about a lot, Marjorie, and love to get your insight on it. So my feeling is I have a respect and I understand that there is a good time for a TurboTax type software. I'm not talking
Hmm.
about TurboTax specifically. And I refer to that when you're a W-2. It's pretty much a given. Put in the numbers, you want to use TurboTax. tax, you're not going to really, I'm not saying it's the best solution, but I'm saying, okay, I can see that as acceptable and okay, right? But I
Right.
feel the minute that you even, people are like, but I just have a sole prop. And I'm like, that doesn't matter. I think the minute you get engaged in a business, I think having an understanding of the complexity of it, that it's not just one form, that there's net operating loss. I'm just using a few to see where I'm going with it, that
Right.
you really can home office calculations type things
Right.
that aren't just a number or a check mark on a form. And you mentioned the word tax strategies, right? And people
Correct.
might think the word tax strategies is, oh, I got $1 billion. What's my tax? No, tax strategy is even for the small person with a small company. So
Right.
in this, I thought, let's talk about, instead of, I'm talking about don't use it because there's all this stuff. What is the advantages of bringing a tax preparer, someone that understands tax strategies, into your list of professional advisors right away, independent of whether you're making just a few sales or not? People are like, I'm just making a few sales. So I've hopefully laid enough of a platform. I want to
hmm
educate, what does the person do other than just make these forms get filled out to go to the government so they can file them away? There's more to it than this.
There is more to it than that. And then let's kind of talk about the difference between a tax preparer and an advisor.
Yes.
So, so just kind of going through the process, someone that's preparing your tax return, it's like they are taking the information that's on your source document, so your W-2, your interest statements, your what is it, like a broker statement. They're taking that information and they're putting it into a software and they're preparing your tax return. But you don't always want someone to just prepare your tax return. You want someone to look at your tax return and advise you. Because even if you are a W-2 employee, you have limited involvement, you don't have a business, there are still things that you should be looking out for when it comes to your tax return. So are you getting a refund, right? If you're getting a refund, what's causing the refund? Is it because you're putting too much money in withholding? Is it because you have a bunch of credits? Is it because, maybe that's kind of the two bigger things. Do you have a lot of deductions? So it's what's causing you to have to getting a refund, or what's causing you to owe? So that's a good conversation to have with someone who's preparing your tax return, or even if you're doing it yourself, because everyone doesn't really need to have someone look at it, because if you're a basic W-2, you could go to TurboTax and you could prepare your tax return. They have people that will answer questions for you. They're not really advisors because that's not what they do, but there is someone that you could ask questions to help to direct you how to prepare it. But when your dynamics change, right? So especially when you start owning a business, um, you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of every deduction that's out there to save on your taxes. And a lot of times people don't think about that. So it could be, you are a sole proprietor, so you have a business use of home or your mileage. That was something that I would always have to, talk to people about. Are you tracking your mileage? Mileage is a big expense that ends up, reducing your taxes a lot, because at what I think it may be 57 cents a mile, that adds up, but
Yep.
people don't track it. And they're like, oh, I think it was such and such, right? But if you have actual information, and you should have actual information, you should be keeping a log of your business miles and then using that on your tax return. Your cell phone, your internet, anything that you do, it says that, I think it's section 212. I don't want to quote the tax code, but I think that's it. It's either 212 or 162. I'll have to look that up. But it's the ordinary and necessary use. So anything that you do to generate income, that's a deduction, right? So if you go out and if you sell 10 widgets, we'll just say, and they're at $1,000 each, but it costs you, $900 to make it, then that's a reduction. You don't have to pay tax on that information, but people don't keep track of that.
Yep. They don't.
And
They
so
don't.
that's an important thing. So, and then kind of we talked about the preparer, and then it's an advisor, and then as you like, even a sole proprietor, it's like you can start your business as that, but as your business grows, you want to be able to know how to pivot. And that was one of the big things that I saw in 2020, was that you have to know how to pivot. You have to be doing some tax planning, some tax strategy, knowing your income. I had a company that they made, like, it was about 3.5 million in 2020. and their business was set up as an LLC, a single member LLC.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. But because we were working together, we were able to pivot and we saved them over, it's probably like $150,000 in taxes
I
because we were
believe
able
it.
to do something at that time.
Yeah.
So there are things that you can do, even when we talked about, I remember a big thing was the G Wagon. Go out and buy a vehicle and you're going to get the Section 179 expense. That may not apply to you, but
Right.
working with someone on a more regular, consistent basis, they'll know that and be able to advise you. And then it'll help you, whether it's in the current year or the future year. So you want to have those ongoing conversations and don't, even if you are using someone as just a tax preparer, reach out to them and I want to say have them talk to you through your tax return. But a big thing for me is understanding what is on your tax return. If you don't understand how it's where the numbers are coming from, you don't really know that what's being reported is correct,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So you should know that if you don't own a home and you have a Schedule A on your tax return, I was like, why, right? You
Yep.
should have that knowledge. Or if you don't have any, charitable deductions, or you don't have anything that's going to warrant that, you should know. I've seen tax returns where people have inflated numbers and the taxpayer just signs off on it. So you should have at least an understanding of what your tax return should look like. You may not know everything, you may not know all the back information, but you should have a general idea.
You just hit on several more points to bring up, and that's the one like to audience to understand, because a lot of people don't realize this. At the end of the day, you, not the preparer, is responsible for the
Responsible.
information
Mhm.
on the tax return. They don't realize, they go, well, a tax preparer did that. You know what else I really like is the distinction that you made, and I never heard it put this way, but you're so true on this, of the difference between preparing and advising. One of the biggest complaints I get from the small companies as I speak to them and they talk about their tax advisor or tax preparation, they say all they ask is for me to give them a download of my file or access to my bank account. Then they send me the tax return. They don't communicate. They don't ask me any questions, and I can't get in touch with them and I can't talk with them. I always explain, find another tax preparer. That's not serving you well. But you know what, Marjorie? I don't know if this is you. Once again, you tell me your sense, and I'm just getting it from feedback from talking with so many people. But it seems like in my years, I've been on planet Earth doing this stuff for a long time. In the last 10 years, we've got more tax preparers for small companies that are just using the software and not giving any advice and no interaction. It's like the chance of somebody interviewing and finding someone that will actually spend time with them is smaller. Like you got to, like a
Mhm.
60%
Mhm.
chance of finding someone that's not servicing you well versus 40. That's, and I'm just using an example. And so that tells me that the IOTUS has to be on the small businesses when they are interviewing a tax preparer to see if they're going to give advice as well as preparation. So can you give us, our audience, advice on what to look for when choosing a tax preparer to make sure they're getting someone that is going to do exactly what you just talked about, speaking to them, seeing what works for their business, seeing what they should record, any information on that?
So I first I'll say, so I'm going to go two ways. I want to comment on the downloading of the books and just preparing the tax return,
Okay.
right?
Please do. That's a big topic. Please do. Go for it. You got the floor.
What's in the books is what's going to be reflective of what your income and expenses are. So it's your responsibility, I would say, as a business owner to make sure that that is properly reflected, right? That all of your expenses are captured, that all of the income is captured. Because again, whether, like we said with an individual, if it's not, the IRS has a system of matching. So they're going to match 1099s to see if you're a sole proprietor, if you're an LLC, they're going to match to see that you're reporting all of that income. We have the 1099Ks that are issued. So they're looking at that to match to make sure that you're reporting all of your income. But so then you have this income, but if you're not properly capturing all of your expenses, then you're paying extra taxes. So my advice to people is always to get a software, QuickBooks, Wave is okay. I don't like zero either.
Like,
I
wait,
should
yeah,
say that.
we talk about QuickBooks or Zero on this show rather than the other ones that really don't give you the report you, especially if you're
Reports.
for a bank loan or something. We extended into that. Yeah.
Right. So I'm working on learning zero. It'll happen here. But have a good system where you all of your income and expenses are being tracked and run everything through your business bank account, run everything through your business credit card, reconcile, track it. It may be off as far as a category, but you're going to have the information in there and provide that to your tax preparer, so that they can review it. I do not like to review, I do not like to prepare a business return without reviewing the books. So I'm always going to ask to see the QuickBooks. I prefer to look at the QuickBooks because I can see how things are categorized, see if there's something that's not correct compared to just having a P&L on the balance sheet.
Gotcha.
So that's just me. Um, and then the other thing with going forward, with the difference between a tax preparer and an advisor is it's a fee. It's an investment. To have an advisor, you're paying for additional services just instead of just someone to prepare your tax return. And you also have to look at there are different levels of tax preparers. So you may go to TurboTax and you're going to get a remote person, right? You go back to them the next year, similar to TurboTax is remote and seasonal, right? A lot of times H&R Block is going to be remote and seasonal. So you won't have a relationship with that person. As you continue to grow, that may be okay in the beginning, but as you continue to grow, and especially as a business owner, you want to have a relationship. An accountant is your trusted advisor. CPAs are trusted advisors. So you want to have that person. And it takes someone a while before they start feeling comfortable to kind of share all the details. And you have to share all the details. You have to give the full story in order to get the best outcome, right? You can't tell me, oh, well, I may have this over here, or I may want to invest, or, I may want to do this, but they need to know everything. And you have to feel comfortable telling them everything because it's a whole picture. It's not just one part of it. So even with a business, we could kind of go through like entity structures and how things pass through to the individual tax return. So you want to have that relationship with someone so that they can look at everything and be comfortable with giving them that information.
Yes. I
So,
had, keep going. I mean to interrupt you if you
okay.
had
So,
going.
and I was just going to say, because you asked me about some of the qualities, it's like I have to speak to the pipeline, which and be compassionate for my colleagues, right? There are a lot more businesses. There are a lot of small businesses that were developed over the past few years. So with more businesses come more work, and the accounting career is it's changing.
Okay.
So again, you have a lot of people that are just kind of coming in because they see it as a moneymaker. And then you have people that are more experienced that are going to offer you different services. So you have to look at that as well. Everything that's inexpensive may not be good for you. So it may be a bigger investment. And if you're a larger company, you need to make that investment in your business. And it's a business expense, so it's a write-off.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest differences. It's the investment. A tax preparer, they're just going to prepare the tax return. Sometimes it's just based on your documents. They may give you a little bit of information, but an advisor is going to look at the whole picture, and they're going to be providing ways that you can structure your business or other things that you can do with your personal finances or future investments that are going to help you to save money on taxes.
Yep. One thing that you were speaking of about the QuickBooks and looking at the numbers and seeing what makes sense, which I fully agree with everything you're saying. I think that over the years with the use of software, it's created I'm going to just say a lack of relationship that many small business owners have with their numbers. Back in the olden days when everything was more hand put in, they knew the numbers, they could look at and go, oh no, that number in that category is not correct. I just did the invoice. But since they're using it syncing with their bank account, they may not be checking it. Their bookkeepers may not even be checking it. Things get into the wrong category, and even the tax preparer may not say, no, oh well, they really didn't spend the money on this, or they didn't see
Mm-hmm,
that.
mm-hmm.
Where I saw mistakes that were really horrific was during COVID. If somebody got a grant and then QuickBooks picked it up as an income,
As
and
income.
you saw that too, and then they didn't catch it, the tax preparer didn't, and then they're paying taxes on this income. So one of a tax preparer once said to me, a CPA actually that I interviewed on the show said, automation needs supervision. And I love that line. And so I
Mm-hmm.
really think that the theme we're talking about here, and I just wanted to put it back in a summary for emphasis, is that small companies really have to have a knowledge and relationship with their numbers as much as needed before they even communicate with the tax preparer, because if they don't understand the numbers, they have the better chance of catching it, in other words, than a tax preparer who isn't knowing what the ins and outs and the transactions in the company. They might
Right.
catch the old one that's standing out going, look here, but maybe not some of the internal ones.
Hmm. Hmm.
Another point I wanted to come back and pick up that you said, that I just want to make a summary so people get it. When you were speaking of the mileage and the use of the cell phone, the audience needs to understand that all of the information isn't just in their QuickBooks file.
QuickBooks.
These are
Right.
separate documents. And I always
Hmm.
tell people, keep a separate log of questions for. So I just
Hmm.
wanted, I mean, had little pearls of wisdom. I wanted to come back and I wanted to grab at some of them, so people understand that it's a full-on game. And I like
It
what you
is.
said about seasonable versus be having a relationship. And I always say, I don't think, choosing lawyers and tax, I don't think that should be done on budget. I don't think that should be done on just checking pricing. From the day I was young and started my first company, I've always had very good advisors legally and tax for me.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's because at the time that's what you did. You didn't have all these other options. But I think that has been one choice that I've made throughout my career that has benefited me well.
Right.
Now, you would mention something about, different legal structures, and I'm going to tell you two things that I noticed that people get a lot of information incorrect. And I'm not saying to get into the details on that because we're not doing that here, but to more say, yes, you're seeing it, or no, you're not seeing it. So I'm going to make three sentences that I say a lot, and you can kind of comment on them all the time, okay, and see what
Okay.
you're. Then once again, this is through just meeting with so many people on a daily basis. So people tell me that they got an LLC because they wanted a tax advantage over a sole prop. And I have to explain to them, well, that's not really true. It's the same Schedule C. And then they say, I got an S Corp because I heard that no matter what, any circumstances, if you are taxed as an X Corp, you're going to have tax savings. So they think that's across the board, not any special type of situation. So I have people who are getting an LLC, and I know it's weird, Marjorie, but I see it all the time. They open an LLC and then file to be taxed as an S corp, and they haven't even had any revenue yet. Yes, I see it. I know you were looking at me like, Lori, what you're talking about. Believe it or not, Marjorie, I see this on a daily basis. I know it's very bizarre. I see it on a daily basis. So to talk about, these are the two things. And then I actually have people say to me, well, no one's a sole prop anymore. Sole props are not a real company. I need to be a LLC or I'm not a real company. Like sole props are this stepchild and you're not real. And so these are things that I would not know if it wasn't for my front into the public through the SBDC, because I wouldn't
Hmm.
have thought these. But these are the three things I'm hearing, so much so I would love it if you'd speak to them in any order, any comments on them.
I think a lot of that goes to what's being presented on social media. And I can kind of say business credit. There's a lot of push for get business credit, get business credit. Don't put
Yes.
credit in your name, get business credit. In order to get business credit, you have to have an LLC, you have to have this, you have to have that. But people don't realize that business credit is still, it kind of still comes back to you. So the original, I explain to people, it's like back in the day when people would start a business, right? There was a conversation about what type of business are you starting? What are you going to be doing? What's the function of your business? What's the plan? How are you going to fund the business? Who's going to be involved, right? Is it going to be multiple people? Is it just you? What are the other benefits that you're looking for? But that changed. And so now you just have people that are starting LLCs.
Yes.
So my thought process is um, you can start a business without it being an LLC. I actually had a conversation recently with someone who was thinking about it. It's like, it may not be for you. If you anticipate only making like $20,000, it's just something that you're kind of doing on the side for now. It's like why go and form an entity and have to pay in California the $800 tax every year? You can just be a sole proprietor. You're going to be taxed on it in the same way, right? Because you're going to end up having to pay self-employment tax. But it could save you some time. And then if you decide that you need to do it, then you can do it. One of the bigger reasons for becoming an LLC, which you probably know this, is the liability protection, right? So if you really don't need that, then why do it? And then I found people that I kind of explained the LLC to S corp, because you have to pay the self-employment taxes. But I tell them it's like it doesn't completely go away, it shifts it, right? So the employer being the businesses, so part of it becomes a tax deduction. Actually, kind of both of it becomes a tax deduction in a sense because one of them is withheld from your salary, and then one of them is a payroll expense. So you're still paying it in a sense, but you're just not writing this big check at the end of the year. It's just being redirected. So they have to have that understanding as well. But there's a tax savings because at the end of the year you're not making this big check. But again, that has other benefits as well. Just choosing a structure, an entity structure should be a more involved conversation instead of just what you see someone else doing.
I love that. In fact, Sadie, I captured her. I did my best, Marjorie, because you said some awesome things. So, Sadie, try to type what I'm saying. She does this great. She puts it in chat. And you correct me. There is a list of when you said the conversations we used to have. I love it. What type of business are you planning on creating? What is the function of the business? How are you planning on funding it? Who is going to be involved in it? What other benefits do you want from the business? Marjorie, I loved that. That is exactly what we used to have as a conversation, and it's missed. So it's what type of business, what's the function of the business, what's funding the business, who's going to be involved in
Mhm.
the business other than you, and what other benefits do you want from the benefit or from
Right. From the business.
I wanted Sadie to capture that because everybody in the audience can pull that out of the chat. And I don't care if they've been in business forever, revisit
Hmm.
those questions and answer those questions. I just thought they were beautiful. And the other thing, I'm killing Sadie on typing, but she always keeps up with me. Choosing a legal entity should have more involvement in conversation than just
It
what you're
should.
saying. It's a
Just,
more
just.
involved conversation. And I tell people that all the time. It is a much more involved conversation. I
Mhm.
absolutely love that. And I always say the good old fashioned soul prop is great because it gives you the fluidity to determine where the business is going, and you can always progress to a structure later if needed.
Right.
So really
Right.
good. I read it. This stat is so old, but it's probably not that incorrect. I think I read it on my EA testing, many years ago. I think that's where I came up with it. But I'm not in fact lane here. I'm just quoting on like memory. But it was something to the degree that about 82%, I'm guessing on all this, Marjorie, 82% of the companies in the United States are actually sole props, which actually makes sense to me because there's a lot of small companies. But at first I was surprised because if you were to ask anybody, especially in California and LA, everybody's an LLC. Sole props
LLC.
don't even exist. And
Right.
so,
Hmm.
but I tell people, no, the majority of, and when you get out in outside the cities, all the little mom and pop shops in the little countries, they're all sole props.
Hmm.
That it's a very viable business structure.
Hmm.
Here's a
Hmm.
question that I have. One thing that I come upon, and I don't see a lot of people forming this, but it exists. So I'm speaking of, I'll give you the scenario. So somebody is saying, yes, I want to be a sole prop. I'm building in a way to explain well, but then they end up saying, but I want to have somebody else in the company. Well, sole props are sole props, right? So I
Hmm.
talk about the ability to have an unregistered partnership. You're just going to have
Hmm.
an unregistered partnership, and therefore you are able to form a more loose connection. You're not going out and forming an LLC, but you still are, forming the company together. I used to see a lot more, I'm just going to call it unregistered partnership. I'm not talking about LLPs and stuff. I used to see a lot more of the partnerships, like somebody owns a little boutique and two people own it or own a little restaurant. I used to see this form of partnership, and I don't see it, and people don't even know it exists. Like they
Hmm.
either have to, like, in other words, it's forcing people that have more than one person that would really prefer to be a sole prop to immediately go incorporate just because they feel like they can't be more than one person without registering their business incorporating. Can you talk to what you're going to have more of insight than I am? Is there something wrong with an unregistered partnership? Why aren't people talking about it? Why aren't they seeing it? I know that a lot of times banks and stuff have a little bit of a problem with the looseness of it, but can we talk about it as whether it's an option or not?
I think it's the looseness of it
Yeah.
and the the independence. So people started businesses for themselves, right? You didn't find a lot of people that were going into business together. It was all, I'm going to start an LLC. I'm going to get my business credit. I'm going to run my business. And so that's kind of the direction that it went to. Um, I don't think I've seen any unregistered partnerships in many years. Usually it's more formal,
Okay.
but you can still form a partnership with two people and you guys go into business together. You just want to make sure that you're tracking everything, so that you can, like you mentioned with the grants, so what's income and not what's a contribution, right? Um, but I don't know if there's any real disadvantage to it. It's an entity. Um, I would assume that there would be an EIN for it.
Yep,
I'm
yep.
not totally
Yeah.
sure.
See,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
it makes sense what you're saying. And I'll tell you, when I came upon seeing them and saw more of them, is unfortunately, I say unfortunately, but during COVID, I was through the SBDC, the top expert on the idle loans and all of the
Mm,
PPP and the restaurant revival, all that stuff because of my
mm-hmm.
finance tax background, right? And legal
Mm-hmm.
structures. I'm an expert on the California legal structures. And because of that, I was looking at a horrendous amount of tax returns per week, a horrendous amount.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was seeing the partnership, the unregistered partnership. And it was true. The SBA was having a hard time with them. I was having a hard
Mm-hmm.
time identifying because of the looseness, but
The
yet they are
looseness.
such a viable option for people. So I just saw
Mm-hmm.
it as a
Mm-hmm.
great opportunity to be
Mm-hmm.
able to say, hey, I'm not seeing them anymore. Why are they gone?
Mm-hmm.
Where did they go? Is there some reason? But I think it's that it is a little bit more challenging, but it's not impossible. And I've
Right.
said to people to check into them because they were wanting to just test the waters for something like a soul prop, but there was being more than one. So that's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where that came from.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'd like to talk about is okay, here's a topic that a few in the audience may hopefully nobody ever experiences, but a few in the audience may, and I do get asked this, and I'm sure you do as well. So here's the situation, and I'll give you the question is if I'm the person, and you give me the kind of conversation you'd have with me. Either I didn't file tax returns. I can't make the payments on the tax returns. I don't have my data, and now I haven't for a year or so, and I don't know what to do. I didn't know I was supposed to because I had an LLC. I get into these kind of conversations a lot more than the average person because of
Mm-hmm.
my, involvement. And so I have
Mm-hmm.
to kind of explain to them, first of all, I like to say, it's not the end of the world because
Right.
you're terrified, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and then I walk them through the processes of getting it correct, what they need to do. But I'm just going to give you my general thing is to try to get them to understand that it needs to be addressed now,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
but you don't need to think like it's the end of your life, right?
Right.
I'm giving
Right.
you two extremes, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but I
Mm-hmm.
do get that asked a lot, and that happens with small companies. So can we
Mm-hmm.
talk about if you find yourself in a you can't afford to pay or you hadn't filed, what would you say to that individual?
Don't ignore it. Don't be afraid of the IRS. They're usually helpful. If you call them and you ask them a question and you just ask for direction, um, they'll help you. If you call and you get someone that's not as helpful, hang up and call back, right?
Yep,
Just
yep, true.
as simple as that. And if you haven't filed, then just file. Just catch up wherever you are, find out what you need to do and just attack it. I'm all about not avoiding issues. It's let's face it, head on and deal with it. So even if it's you haven't filed past tax returns, file the past tax returns. If you owe the IRS, make sure all your returns are filed, call them and find out what you can do in order to, to pay. And then not just that, but how can you be proactive going forward? So if you have a balance and your balance from previous years is because you're not paying enough, then you're not doing like enough withholding or essence or whatever, then going forward start doing that so you're not digging a bigger hole.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
One of my sayings is kind of what pay under Caesar what is Caesar's, and it may be a challenge in the beginning, but you'll learn to live without it and then you won't have that thing hanging over you,
Yeah.
right? And then sometimes when you have to make up back things, it makes you work a little bit harder going forward, right? So you become creative. How do I create additional income? How do I change my living habits? How do I, live within my means? But you're not building, you're not digging a bigger hole. And that's really where you need to stop is like, let's just stop it here, fix it, and move forward. So that's a big thing. The other things, like if you don't have the information, you can contact the IRS. You can't do it as much for businesses. I've had some challenges trying to get like 1099s for a business, but for an individual, you can just go on the website and you can get a copy of your transcript. You can also ask them to send you an unmasked copy, which is so much better because it has all the employer EINs, and it gives you more information so that when you go to take it to someone, they can prepare the tax return. But all of
Yep.
that information is available, and the IRS, they are helpful. The IRS and the Franchise Tax Board, they're humans as well. Your approach has to be, more in a kind of a positive help me get out of the situation. What do I do? I don't want to be here. How do I fix it? And I'm sure you'll find good success with that.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree with you on everything you said. I've had to call the IRS on behalf in my private business for companies that I was a CFO. And there was a couple of them that they were in pretty deep with some back taxes. And I was in the room, with them calling the IRS. And I got to tell you, I was really surprised. This was a decade ago. That was my first introduction to this. I was surprised how helpful the IRS was then. And they were willing to work with you. And the other thing that I didn't had no awareness until I went for my EA exam is that the penalties to not file are more than the penalties to not
Not
pay.
pay.
And when I learned that, I was like, wow, because I knew so many people that were afraid they couldn't pay, so they didn't
Hmm.
file,
You
when
didn't
in
file.
essence, you'd be better off filing and then working out a payment plan because the penalties to not file. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe if you don't file, the statute of limitations goes out the window as well. You are not,
Right, right.
am I correct on that, right? So
They can.
really, yep, that's what I thought. So really, the key is to file. And
Mm.
yeah, also, I know the IRS because being an EA through the IRS, I have all these emails I get bombarded with. Marjorie, I bet I get 20 emails a day from the
Oh,
IRS,
wow.
believe it or
I can
not.
imagine.
But yeah, it's incredible just because I have to be informed of all the or the IRS, because they inform the EAs. But I get emails constantly about asking if I want to apply and get grants from the IRS to offer free tax preparation for them because they have so
Mm.
many services. I'm not talking about necessarily the grants, but what they do is they have a certain amount of grants that they are getting EAs to offer free services to small businesses, to seniors, to physical locations. Right now, with tax season around, I'm getting a ton of them. We want people to apply for grants right now. We will reimburse you to help people for free. And IRS is even trying to launch a TurboTax type software. So I'm
Hmm.
seeing them go more and more trying to help the individual. I also see that I feel like their website has gotten less confusing to read. Have you noticed that?
I have. It's really easy to go on there and log in and see what your balance is and move forward. Yes.
Yeah, even they're trying to use even slang words like gig,
Gig
gig workers
economy.
and stuff to get people to be able to understand what they're saying. So, I always say as long as we're here on 3D, we have to play the Monopoly game, and the
Hmm.
IRS is not going away. And so you just have to, actually, that was so funny because I have to say that's why I decided to go and get my EA license, my certification. Is I thought to myself, someday I'm not going to want to do all this CFO number work. I'm going to want to do something. What is it that you always have, no matter what, and I heard my mother saying, well, the only thing you have to do is die and pay taxes. I'm like, I don't want to be a mortician. So I, yes. And so I thought, well, I've always been curious about, understanding tax more. Let me go get the certification because they say when you get older, you should do crossword puzzles to keep your
Oh
brain.
no.
I'm like, I hate crossword puzzles. I'll do tax returns.
Do
I'll get
tax
paid to keep
returns.
my brain. I hate crossword puzzles. But yeah, that's what promoted the EA. And what was interesting is I thought I was going to go through the intense testing they put you through and come out and realize I didn't understand it and it was confusing because I didn't know. No, tax is confusing. It's not
Mhm.
black and white. There's a lot of gray in that.
A lot of
And
gray in
and
there. Mhm.
that's where I think a lot of the small companies think it's just a form, so it's black and white, but it's really not. There's a lot of gray and decisions making and precedents, and that's why
Right.
getting an advisor. Comment on that a little bit because people think it's all black and white and it's really not.
It's not. It's not. And again, like I mentioned before, it's all what's unique to you. And just because you can check a box, you may be able to check the box, but in a different way and have different circumstances that apply to you. So having that conversation or having a conversation, it makes a difference. When you are able to explain your situation or someone kind of knows your background or someone's looking at your transactions, right? They get more information like that. And I also wanted kind of changing the direction, not really direction, but um you mentioned kind of about business owners not knowing their numbers or kind of it being a challenge about having the direct access to it or whatever, but I think it's empowering. If you can go in and click on a button and you get a P&L, or your bookkeeper can get a P&L, or even if it's hooked up and it's automatic, but it may take them a little less time, which it would take them, than having to enter all these checks, enter all these transactions. That's being able to put more power back in the hands of the business owner so that they can again make real-time decisions. um, we're in the middle of December, and I was just looking at my calendar. It's like, okay, I have like 2 weeks before, I hope it's 2 weeks, maybe one full week next week before Christmas. Like you guys are going to take off for 2 weeks, but it's tax planning. It's like, what can people do between now and the end of the year that's going to help them? What can they change? What can they adjust? It's not just, did you buy a car? Did you have this expense? It's like, what can you do now? How can we have a conversation that's going to help you so that when you get your tax bill, or even so that you know what your tax bill is going to look like come next year, so that you can plan for that, you
Yep,
know?
it's so true. I mean, this is the time that I'm looking at things. I have a person who I have had as a tax preparer advisor for, I bet you 25 years. He stays a
Hmm.
part of my life. I'm meeting with him Friday, going, here's my
Hmm.
strategy, here's my plan, look over my shoulders, what else do you see? Because as you're alluding to, a lot of these choices have to be made before December
Before
31st.
December 31st.
So now
Hmm.
is the time to look into that. And I also agree completely, and thank you for saying the word empowerment. I like the automation of QuickBooks being downloaded. I have nothing against the automation. I want the supervision part. I want
Right.
people to look at it. And when I was a young business owner, I actually thought you gathered numbers just to fill out the tax forms, to sign them and put them in the file folder. And so I know a lot of small businesses think of that, where I'm saying, no, pull out all these documents, examine them, know them, and have an understanding of how to make decisions. They're your friends. They're
Yes.
telling you what to see. They're saying, look here, you're not noticing this. You're not making money on this. Or look here,
Right.
you could make more money on this. They're trying to talk to you and you're stuffing them in a file and
In the
not letting
file.
them speak.
Right, right. And you're not having I keep saying the conversation, but you're not having the conversation with someone you know, that can even tell you, yes, it's telling you that, yes, you're not making a profit, or you're not, making enough money, but then also, how is that going to affect you as you move forward? And then what can you do? Because the purpose of a business, it should be, is to generate an income, right? To produce a profit. Back in the day, they weren't doing all of that, but that's the purpose, is to produce a profit. So how do you do that, and how do you build on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know
Hmm.
what I say all the time, and as we come to a closure here, I feel so strong about the future with a lot of small companies engaged
Hmm.
in it. I am 100% supportive of the small company. I believe that when people can create the freedom and the direction in their life, and they get the fulfillment of owning their own company, and they're empowered by owning their own company, and then small companies come together in the marketplace, they exchange and trade and all benefit, and we know who we're buying from, and we feel good about how we're buying from. That is a future that I want to see in commerce. That's what I want to see
Hmm.
more of
Hmm.
personally. I think it's empowering personally. I think it's empowering professionally. And I think it helps us all to create good products and good services and have responsibility and relationships with them and feel empowered personally. So that's the vision of the world that I want to see personally. But Marjorie, I do not think we are going to get there ever if the small companies don't understand their numbers and are thinking passion is going to make them profitable. They're racking up their credit cards personally because they're not making any money and they're struggling. That's going to take us in the opposite direction. So I feel as though the big thing that's holding us all back from that vision that I just said is understanding the numbers, having good advisors on tax strategy, having good advisors on legal strategies when you need legal in your business. DIY a lot of things. Do your own website, do your own social media, but find experts that are able to advise you accordingly so you can have a successful company. I'm going to pass it to you on any comments you'd like to make as we close.
That was so good. That was it was so
I
good.
empowered
And
you.
then I was just kind of thinking about that. It's like because I heard I'm not a big politician, but you know, things that change with new administration, right? But how can we empower ourselves? And I think that's it. It's like they're saying, the imports, we're not going to have anything because it can't be imported, and but we're knowledgeable. The United States is knowledgeable, but we just
Yep,
have to educate our people. So
yep,
what I wrote down is take advantage of resources.
yep,
It's like you guys have a wonderful program there. Get all the information that you can. Do your QuickBooks learning or your YouTube learning, like we said, but find your tribe, find your
yep.
team, find your board of directors that's going to help you to build and grow your business, right? Those people that are going to plug into you. So take advantage of that. And oh, there's something else I wrote down that I can't. But understand the numbers. Maybe that's it. Just kind of understand the numbers and take advantage and don't wait. Don't be reactive, be proactive. Be proactive in knowing your numbers, knowing your business, how you can build and grow, and the pivots and the changes that you need to make to be successful.
Yep, awesome, awesome. Well, I want to do a shout out to some of the questions that were put in there. Derek Lamar, Derek, both of you reach out to me for additional questions, and Marjorie's information is in the chat. So if you want to find out more about her rates, etc., that you asked, please contact Marjorie directly. It has been a wonderful conversation, and a thank you out there to Delia. I know you're out in the audience there to suggesting Marjorie. You were dead on. I always Delia. I suggest somebody, I listen. She suggested several good people for my show. So she's got an
Awesome.
ear to me, and I can see why. So I'd love to have you back on after tax
Okay.
season. I know
Architect,
you're
thank you.
about to go under, right? So I will touch back with you after between April and October before the extension.
Awesome.
That little chunk of
That
time.
little window, right?
Yeah, that little window, I'll reach back to you and we'll have a conversation because what you said is just priceless for our small companies to know. And I'm so glad to know that there are people out there that are providing CPA services that are doing it in a way that is assisting and adding advice and adding information because I feel together we can all create a brand new existence for the entrepreneur mom and pop of yesterday, 2.0, I guess. It's the mom
Right.
pop that I grew up in the country 2.0 coming out strong 2025. We're going to be unstoppable.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
So,
That's
Sadie,
awesome.
I'm going to get you back to help us close out. As always, Sadie's going to say her final words and then she's going to stay on to make sure you get Marjorie's information, my information, any information you guys need. She'll be there. Sadie.
I mean, yeah, you know what it is? I'm just like, dang, I feel adulting right now, where I'm just like, I normally wear glasses. I'm like, but I'm going to be pushing them up real high today, where I was like, it's right. Because the thing is, if you wait last minute, that's where it goes wrong. But see, now when it's like things are slowing down, ask yourself the questions. I'm like, yes, I feel it. I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to start. I'm adulting.
Yep, adulting, adulting. I like that. I know those were excellent questions. I love that you captured it. Excellent, excellent questions. Well, I want to say to everybody, all my frequent flyers, thank you for being there. If you're new to the show, please check us out every week, as well as on the YouTube channel where all of our shows are posted. I know Sadie put that into the chat and she will again. And we will be returning next week for our final show for 2024, but we're coming back strong in 2025. So I want to thank you, Marjorie, again for coming on the show, and a shout out to everybody in the audience. Thank you for joining me here for Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. See you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.